We're live.
I'd like to call the tourism committee meeting to order for March 24th. Okay, you're doing the back.
You're wrong.
Come along.
Well, we realized Mr. Crescido went overtime.
3 minutes on it.
3 minutes. I was 3 minutes early.
First order of business is to have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 27th meeting.
Make that motion.
Okay, Supervisor Stroud and one other. Supervisor Cosito. In the second. Does anybody have any discussion regarding the minutes? Nope. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Next, we'll have privilege of the floor and public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Laura Coles, courtyard by Marriott and Marine Village Resort. I just thought I'd give you guys a quick update regarding Q1 2025 for the business results that we are seeing at our properties. Just because I think it's going to be throughout the area for Q1. The courtyard by Marriott is going to report down significantly for OCTAX, both on occupancy and ADR. In Q1, we are hopeful that the second half of the year, we will be able to make it up because April is also going to be not good, given that there was a last year, the big eclipse scenario, which really helped a tremendous number of businesses. I don't think any of us can make those numbers up that are open during the quarter. So please be aware of that for all of sales and OCTAX collections. I am hearing through, the third hand anecdotal that of course restaurants are also seeing a decrease as a result. So that will impact sales tax collections. For Marine Village, which is more seasonal, and some of the other resorts that report up to me, we are holding steady for advance bookings for the summer season. As of today, I'm within 1% of last year's numbers at the same time this year. But we are, as of right now, down in occupancy. The gross revenues are based on slight upticks in ADR. So for future reference, as we continue to go through the year, I do think there are some challenges that some of the businesses are facing for sure. There's economic uncertainty in the world. There's economic uncertainty within the businesses. Everybody's revenues are maybe hopefully going to be at least flat. Expenses, as you all know, are going up between minimum wage increases, prices of everything. So I would just please encourage everybody to take a look at what we're doing with fees, expenses, sales tax, OCTAX, everything across the board, and really be cognizant of the fragility maybe of the tourism industry in this county. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Anybody else would like to have any public comment? Okay, I'll close privilege of the floor. We have no new action items, so we'll go right into discussion items. And our tourism director will give her report.
Thank you so much. So I am just going to give a very quick report. I want to highlight my office for completing or almost completing our travel guide. It's been a heavy lift for the office, and I'm very excited to say that we're printing a whole new guide. We're excited to have it out next month. Is it March, April? Yes. And therefore, we will then be getting it out to businesses in April, May timeframe. But kudos to Casey O'Brien, who has overseen the entire project this year and has been instrumental in, keeping it on time, within budget, and also within our brand. So I'm very excited that she has taken on this challenge and she's done a great job. So when you see her, if you wouldn't mind extending her congratulations on that, because she's a great team member that we have in the office. So if you don't mind, I would like to introduce the next speaker, if that's okay. So as part of our last committee meeting, we had approved a visitor economy stewardship vision as I've been speaking about a lot, there's a lot of changes in what's happening in the travel industry. And so we have brought Josiah in to really look at that from a Warren County perspective and kind of review who we are, what we are, and take his viewpoints of visitor studies that he does throughout the United States and other destinations. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Josiah Brown for the Visitor Academy Stewardship Vision. I do want to make one comment. I didn't print out the presentation because a lot of what he has is just visualization. His words are more, he's more of a speaker than he is as far as presenting on screen, but these are just go along with his words. So if you wouldn't mind bringing up the presentation, but if Josiah, if you want to go ahead and start, the mic is yours.
Do I have a clicker or do?
You just look at Tammy and you just go
Off of the
next. in your
signal all of our
conversation.
own.
Yeah.
Just go Vinny.
Perfect. Well, good morning and thank you for having me here. Heather said I couldn't talk for more than 2 hours, so I've shortened this down a bit. I am the guy who gets the kickoff keynote at a lot of state conferences across the country, and they give me 55 minutes, but I think she gave me 5 or maybe 10. But it's a pleasure to be here, even though I drove from spring back into winter. One of my favorite places. I have been involved in some capacity with Warren County tourism for about 20 to 21 years now. And there has been a little bit of an evolution of the roles that I serve in the company. If you could put up the next slide. 21 years ago, set out on a mission to help redefine how New York's story is told. If I'm standing in Minnesota or Indianapolis or Toronto or many of the cities that I've already spoken in this year, and I say, I'm from New York, which I think is my next slide. No, I guess not. You know what they all think when you say you're from New York. That idea of how large and how diverse of a state we have, how incredible of a product we have as a state has really, for me, scripted a whole career of helping explain and storytell and inspire people to visit the state. Our mission for many, many years as a tourism brand was to win first-time visitors or somebody who hadn't been in a long time back to the state of New York. That was really what we focused on. And for many years, we have run a campaign, a mobile visitor center campaign across the state and across the East Coast. And it's more than just travel guide distribution, which we do. It's more than just advertising, which we do. It's really a whole out-of-home campaign where we go to massive events and things like the Boston Marathon and the Philadelphia Flower Show and the New Jersey Balloon Festival and the Jones Beach Air Show. And we set up a huge display to re-inspire and reinvigorate people into seeing that New York is such a top-tier tourism destination and that they don't have to travel far to get high quality family experiences, getaways, and adventures. And so that has been a pleasure. Over the last probably 9 years, I have been invited first throughout the counties of New York State and now more nationally to really speak on what is a rapidly evolving industry that we're a part of, a rapidly evolving industry that we serve. And there has been this generational shift to what we call visitor economy stewardship. And I just want to frame out for maybe 6 or 7 minutes here the landscape of what we're facing and how I come into a destination. When I was raised, what was so normal was to think about this mantra that was taught of, do as well as you can in high school and go as far as you can in college, and then get into a company, put your head down and work, begin to build seniority, begin to build a retirement. And when there was this whole future cast of, when you retire, you get to go see the world. Travel was always hooked on this idea of getting to the end of your career and going and seeing the world. But then in the middle, you'd have that family vacation. I think we all kind of grew up taking that family vacation to the lake, to the ocean, camping. That was really how an entire tourism industry had been built. It was that family vacation destination, and it was that retiree travel destination. And if you went through most of the industries, from the hotels to the airlines to the cruises to the destination marketing and management side, that's pretty much how we thought. Where is somebody going to take their 2-week vacation and what will they go do when they retire? But the millennial generation, the younger Xers coming into the millennial generation, they experienced a very different world, beginning with 9/11, upending the idea of all norms, both from the idea of a job, getting a career, having a long career, as well as travel and just the fear and the difference of how we thought through that era. I remember being 17 years old on 9/11, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it immediately began to reshape how I thought about the world. The idea of assets, would they be there long enough for me to eventually get there? Would the world be normal for long enough for me to get there? And this wanderlust kind of started to build in me of, I kind of wanted to see the world now. I wanted to travel now. But then you fast forward 7 years and the Great Recession sets in, and we begin to see the millennials are watching an economy fall apart and housing go underwater. They begin to see companies go out of business, entire retirement accounts go underwater. What happened nationally, globally, culturally, is that the idea of waiting to travel or travel being kept into small categories changed, and it changed forever. The millennial generation started to travel 4 to 5 times a year on average. That had never happened before in 18 to 28-year-olds. And so they began to up influence into Generation X and younger baby boomers, and Gen Z just thought that was normal. Do you know what the number one and first question a Gen Zer asks on a job interview? How much time do I get off? How much vacation time do I have? This is just a normal thing. And so in our industry, 3 major things shifted. One, there was much more openness to traveling to more rural and off the beaten path destinations. It wasn't just the tourism hubs. The younger travelers wanted to see everywhere. They wanted to go hiking, and they wanted to find craft beverages, and they were looking for who served espresso, and they chased avocado toast like it was somehow like the ambrosia of the gods. That's all they wanted was avocado toast. Who's serving this $14 piece of bread? But the first thing that and I do love avocado toast, I have to say, put a little bit of that everything sprinkle on there. I digress. This matters in the sense that it changed how we present our destinations. It changed how our lens of the visitor changed. But also it began to change the economy for how young people were moving around. We weren't sure, if you talk to economics professors during those eras, they said, I'm not sure this generation is ever going to settle down. They just want to travel, travel, travel. But they did begin to settle down. And that's where another major shift entered the market, because as they began to settle down, they started to prioritize places that they had enjoyed visiting. That was a really interesting thing. And the third aspect of the change of their mindset was that they started to think about where they wanted to live before where they wanted to work. That was, so they with 3 major changes: traveling all the time, 4 to 5 times a year, beginning to prioritize where they wanted to actually live based on how much they enjoyed visiting, and then looking at where they wanted to live before where they wanted to work. So it wouldn't surprise you to see that the tourism industry, or what we call the visitor economy, which I'll define the two, the visitor economy from 15 years ago to today in New York State went from the 7th to the 6th to the 5th to the 4th to the 3rd to now the 2nd largest industry in New York State. So we have rocketed forward as an industry to now being New York State's 2nd largest industry. And that's because it's now connected to so many different habits and mindsets of the young traveler, of the young resident, of the young investor. How are we going to get our share of the visitors that are traversing the world is now inextricably tied in to how are we going to get our share of young residents, young families, and young investors. They're now the same thing. And that's what we call visitor economy stewardship, destination management, and marketing. We are becoming another facet of how economic development moves. And so, and I'm just going to kind of abandon my slide presentation here and shorten this a little bit for you. But think about it this way. Post-World War II, every destination, virtually every county in America, scrambles to put in an economic development department. Most of them come back to the post-World War II era because expansive growth was happening everywhere. And here was the question: how are we going to get our share of this growth? How are we going to get our share of this economic opportunity? So virtually every county in America creates an economic development department. And that department thinks this way: if we bring work, if we bring a company, it brings jobs. We have to get work. But bringing work and company and jobs brings live. That's how we bring residents and stabilize residents and keep families living multi-generationally locally. If you bring work, it brings live. But where you have a lot of people living, they foster this thing called play, which is communities, downtowns, restaurants, non-for-profits, open spaces, theater groups. Work, live, play. You've probably seen that on economic development posters. That's kind of how they talk about quality of life. If you maintain this work, you maintain live, and you foster play. That's what we call community. That's what we call quality of life. But now, coming strongly out of the pandemic, we see a new trend, which is that the younger mind thinks about visit first. Where do we want to travel? What do we want to see? Before college, in college, after college, they're predominantly interested in visit. But the places they're visiting are becoming their top list of where they might want to live, because the places they visit have these quality of place assets that they love. It might be hiking, it might be craft beverages, it might be those espresso shops that they can work on their laptop. And then the last thing they think about is the work. They think about visit. What's the quality of the visit? Maybe I'd like to live there. And then maybe I'd actually like to work there. I spoke in Mesa, Arizona, and I was about to take the stage at a large event to explain this concept of, maybe it's actually your success of winning a visitor that will cause you to stabilize your resident population, that will cause you to have workforce for your businesses. Maybe that poster of work, live, play, that's very essential work. The County Economic Development Department is doing very essential work. But now the tourism campaign is stewarding a second lane of economic development. It's bringing in the eyeballs of the next generation, and it's building the type of things young people want to live around. So maybe visit, live, work is as important of a strategy as work, live, play. So I'm about to go on stage in Arizona and present this topic, and I think, am I crazy? I know my wife says about weekly that I am. So am I crazy? And I get in my Uber. I'd gone to breakfast from the hotel. I get in my Uber, and as I always do, I ask the Uber driver, where are you from? And he says, oh, I'm right here. I live right here in Mesa, Arizona. But originally I'm from Ohio. Well, how'd you get from Ohio to Mesa, Arizona? Oh, well, my wife came out here on a bachelorette party. And as soon as she landed, she said, I could see us living here. So she came home and she dragged me back, and we took a visit, and we looked around, and we went to the shops, and we went to the restaurants, and we went to the craft beverages, and we said, we could really see ourselves living here. So we packed up and we moved here. And I said, oh, you had jobs? No, we just decided this is where we wanted to live. So they moved, and she got a job in healthcare where she worked. And he said, and I just started to see that there were no Uber drivers in this destination. So now I drive Uber and I make a great living. Visit, live, work. So when we come into a destination, what we're looking at is, how are we finding that younger visitor? What are we presenting to them? What type of visitors tend to fit this destination? What type of businesses do they prioritize? And how do we use it as really an economic development strategy to fuel a tourism industry strongly into the future, but knowing that the more successfully we fuel a tourism industry, the more we are building the type of communities young people want to live, invest, and grow families in. So now it's a dual strategy, and we look at a destination through those eyes. How do we stay competitive with our brand? How do we stay competitive and in the environment where Pennsylvania has just doubled down on their tourism campaign? New Jersey has just doubled down on their tourism campaign. I was just in Minnesota. The state director for Minnesota tourism got up on stage right before my keynote and said, you know why the state of Minnesota is investing in tourism? Because we know every time we get a young visitor, we're actually bringing them on their first date of choosing Minnesota to live, work, and play. I was like, oh, thanks for taking all the thunder out of my speech. But this strategy is permeating. New Jersey said for years, we have the beaches. We don't need to promote. They're coming anyway. And you know what? They were right. Until Virginia stepped up their plans. Myrtle Beach stepped up their plans. Long Island stepped up their plans. And for the first time in history, New Jersey beaches fell out of the top 10. And they went, uh-oh. It's not that people don't just travel anyway. It's that we're in the most competitive tourism environment we've ever been in. The strategies are getting sharper. So what I have to do is come into a destination and say, is this a destination that can go the long way? Is this a destination that can actually have a long-term plan? Is there a structure here that the residents and the destination can work together and make a strategy that works for the residents and works for the visitor? I mean, when you come into the Adirondacks, this is a destination that defines the very term of sustainability. We define sustainability in the tourism industry as, could you do it forever? And that's really almost the essence of how the Adirondack Park was built, how the Adirondacks as a culture were built, is that sensitivity of visitation, residence, and stewardship long-term. That's the lens that we come into a destination for. So we want to see, well, who is your prime visitor? Where is your resident satisfaction? What do they need? What is their relationship with the visitor economy? How do we make sure that residents know tourists are essential, but that our tourists aren't driving our residents crazy? And then how do we map for the future so that you are sustainable, meaning that this mechanism can keep working, can keep building business success, can keep building quality of life for residents, and keep building a brand that will be competitive because you have the product. This is a product that we have been proud to represent on the road for decades now. And we'll be in Long Island or New Jersey or Pennsylvania, and people will say, Lake George, I haven't been there since I was a kid. But more and more, we're hearing stories further out into the destination. We're hearing stories about Warrensburg and North Creek and just places that people are going off the beaten path. Why? Because the hub will always be the hub, but the future generations are far more interested in the spokes. They want to go to every corner. They want to see every place. Ideally, they'd love to climb a hiking trail that is perfectly manicured that no one's ever been on. That's their real dream. They want to find it for the first time, but they don't want to step over any logs. So that's what we're here to do. And we've got a lot of really cool case studies. And for me, particularly, whenever I'm in New York, I have a deep well of just comp set. Who are our true competitors? What are a lot of our verticals? What do some of our visitor profiles look like? I have some of that inherently in New York because I've just worked here for so long that I don't have on projects in Michigan and Indiana and some of these other places that we're working. So went off my presentation a little bit, but I hope that gives you an overview of the mindset we're bringing here. You have the product. I think you have a great future. I'm hoping to help map that.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments for the restaurant?
Yes, how does quality hiking, biking, kayaking experiences fit in with the millennial desire?
The millennials have been marked, and now millennials are starting to age into that, a little bit of the core family demographic now. You see, the millennials used to want to, when you said camping to a millennial, They wanted to pitch a tent 100 yards off a trail in the middle of nowhere. They're like, we don't need to go to a campground. Then they started having kids. As soon as you start having kids, all of a sudden Holiday Inn and the campground with a pool seem like a much better promise. So the millennials have been slowly coming back to a very traditional travel type of metric, amenities and things like that. Their generation is very highly marked with this idea of experiences instead of things. They have foregone investments in homes and cars and all of these traditional things to be able to keep themselves able to travel more. So statistically, they were much more prone to be adventure travelers. They're a little bit more in the family life stage now, and we're finding that the older Gen Zs are now taking up the more of the category of being super adventure travelers. But it's a mix. There is no one definition of any generation, but
Well, I asked because I saw 5 cars from Ontario parked at the Rush Pond Trail System on Gurney Lane Road. And so I stopped and I talked to them. I said, you know, they're unloading their mountain bikes. I said, what's going on, guys? I'm just curious. And I introduced myself as the town supervisor and so forth. They said, well, we're on kind of a tour. We're going from mountain bike experience to mountain bike experience up in Canada. That's where they're from. And we would, and you were one of them. This area is one of the premier mountain biking experiences, and that's why we're here. We'll move on to the next one after you. So I said, well, that's interesting. And these were young people. So that's why I asked.
yeah. The most mobily minded generation yet were the millennials. The explore everything, the sample every flavor. We actually thought for a while, and this probably goes back maybe a decade now, will you even get them as a return visitor? Because they want to go do everything once. They kind of want to get to Baskin Robbins and try a different flavor every time they come. And that kind of presented an opportunity and a challenge. And the answer was, yeah, that was very much how they were. Let's go see everywhere once. But even myself, being an elder millennial, as soon as those kids came along, we began to circle back around to more of the places that had provided a more predictable experience. And that predictability is kind of one of the core tenets of destination branding, that you know what you're going to get, which is why you get that return visitor. And the millennials are starting to, they're not really starting, they're well into now coming back to the familiar because of the child element.
I'm sorry,
That's all right. Yeah.
but I'm starting to see more and more and more traveling on the Thruway or the Northway, cars with bicycles attached, cars with kayaks, sometimes both on the roof. I'm starting to see more and more of that.
Sure.
And they are not carrying trailers or anything else. They just got their bicycles and kayaks and they're going someplace. And I'm seeing more of that.
Yeah. I would say that makes sense for what we're seeing. And obviously we'll want to see in every town kind of how it's working and what's becoming more normal for you. You know, certainly you have what most rural destinations don't have, which is you have this artery right through, which is such an incredible asset. So we'll want to see that for sure.
Supervisor Cressida?
Thank you. I agree with everything you're saying, absolutely, and that you see more and more of those visitors. The region, go back years, was built on a family destination, a blue collar family destination. I've been behind front desk of motels and hotels for a long time, and so have a lot of other people. In so many words, what we hear more and what I hear more is, you know, what does that do? Did you go to the lake? Did you hike? Beautiful. I never seen anything like it. I got 3 small kids. What do you want? What do I do? You know, did you play miniature golf? They want to be entertained still. So as that market grows, we're losing some of the families that are looking to be entertained at that other level. I know what you said. I wrote a note, stepped up their plans. I know Pennsylvania, isn't there a town in Pennsylvania that just put Legoland in?
That was Orange County, New York. Yeah,
Orange County,
yeah,
New York.
yeah.
Yeah, as much as everything you're saying, I agree with totally. We're being more challenged to keep that returning family back that has created memories in Lake George and want to keep going back with their families.
Yeah.
So that has become a challenge, and, you know, I don't know if anyone else agrees with that, but
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think when you have the percentage of spend by household budget, that percentage that is dedicated to travel is higher generationally than it's ever been. And that's part of what has fueled this rise in the visitor economy from, I call it, like, it used to be the icing to some states, and now it's like the cake.
Yeah.
You know, and when you say now the second largest industry in New York State, people are waking up to it and competing. What we always look at is obviously what's the product now and how do we use that product to attract. My philosophy, I say this all the time, is there's 8.5 billion people in the world. If you are really good at speaking who you are, there's plenty of people to find you. But then we also want to think about, but how are we then thinking 10 years in the future of what product will need to be here to continue that momentum? You know, I was a part of the advocacy team behind Legoland getting cited. And one of the wake-up calls that we had, which kind of launched half of my speaking career, was how much opposition there was to a destination asset being built that was programmed for 2 to 12-year-olds. Like, when they talked about this thing, you would think that they were building the largest asphalt plant on the East Coast. People would talk about it. It's going to ruin Orange County. It's going to ruin Goshen. They had bought 500 acres and they were going to develop on a 100-acre donut hole a resort for 2 to 12-year-olds and build their own exit on and off, which we actually didn't really want that exit on and off because it becomes more of a fortress destination at that point. We wanted them to trickle through the destination. And the campaign that was launched to stop that was one of the most extraordinary things I've ever lived through in this industry. Once it was built, the residents in the neighboring neighborhood that were afraid that their quality of life was going to be destroyed, 2 years after it was built, they started to come and say, did they ever get that open? And they're like, yeah, it's been open for 2 years. Like, they do fireworks on 4th of July and you didn't even hear them. So there is this mindset of that, you know, NIMBYs, you've heard NIMBYs, not in my backyards. NIMBYs are reasonable people. They're community members. They are usually the good pressure you need back on a developer to make sure that they're doing everything right. I love NIMBYs because they're reasonable people. Part of what we're experiencing is the era of bananas, which is building anything anywhere is absolutely not acceptable.
Write that down.
And
It's a good one, I like that.
we have to manage the understanding of what it's bringing, because the message that I brought to Goshen was this town is going to look different with Legoland. But here's the unfortunate thing. It's going to look different anyway, because you are rapidly losing the population that built this place. And so they were nervous about traffic, which is a very reasonable concern. But I said, managing traffic is a reasonable concern. Let me put you on a bus and take you to 100 communities that have no traffic. Managing that is far more difficult, because once the people who have kind of always had a home and a career and a good retirement, as they start to leave, what's left is the promise to the youth. What have we left them? What generational legacy have we left them? And in a lot of these towns, they go off a cliff. And they go off a cliff because the really well-heeled, well-funded residents there, they retire, they go to Arizona, Florida, Nashville, and all of a sudden that destination doesn't have it. What Legoland brought in was actually not as much traffic as people thought, but it brought in hundreds of jobs for young people. The amount of gainfully employed young people in that destination, the amount of people who have said to me, I get to choose to grow up and live with my kids where I grew up. And it was solely because of either Legoland or the impact around it. So sometimes we look at a destination through that lens of, you have what you have now, but what should be next? And let's start that conversation.
I agree.
Great perspective.
Are there any other questions or comments? Oh, not to him, you mean on your own?
Yeah, he's got to
Okay.
go and privilege of the floor.
Okay, yep. All right, well, if
Any-
there's none, thank you very
Thanks,
much for your.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I saw you wrote
Okay.
that down.
And I'm gonna open the
No, you're
meeting up to
fine.
privilege of the floor.
Well, you know,
You can go.
it would have been cool up at that.
Just a quick comment, Gary Thornquist, Lake George RV Park, what you were saying is spot on. You know, I agree with everything you're saying, but what isn't addressed, I don't think, is the shortness of stay. That's changed remarkably in the last 15 years. It's gone from 7 nights down to 3 nights, so Monday through Wednesday, we're all struggling. It doesn't matter if you discount either or offer special things, it's basically something that's set up within these younger people that they will not come Monday through Wednesday. You used to be able to get overflow, people that couldn't get in for the weekend would say, okay, I'll take anything, I'll stay Monday through Wednesday, but that's the real challenge now with all of the tourism businesses, and you see even restaurants, you know, closing on Mondays and Tuesdays, things like that. That's basically a result of the pandemic, when they got used to doing that. But now they don't have the business on those days to do it. And they've raised their rates or their prices to cover those 2 days that they don't have business. That is the biggest challenge facing our business right now, is Monday through Wednesday business and the shortness of stay, which means we have to increase our rates on the weekends, which puts us sometimes out of touch or in a non-competitive situation with other destinations. So anything we can do to increase the length of stay, give them more to do, give them an itinerary of more stuff to do. There's plenty to keep people busy for 7 days in this area, but they're just not doing it. So that's our issue. Thank you.
My kids are clinically addicted to your pickleball courts.
Okay.
We spent the whole time of our trip on your pickleball.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind,
Yeah, go ahead.
thank you very much, and I have a proposal for the committee. But first, a little story. The presentation that was made before I came up here reminded me of a number of things, and I was one of those. It was over 40 years ago. My wife and I were driving through this area on our honeymoon, and we said to each other, wouldn't it be cool to live here? It didn't take long, and the taproot grew really deep, really fast. But in terms of trying to attract people, there's a town in Hamilton County called Speculator. I don't know if anybody has been in Speculator. You drive into Speculator, do your thing, you drive back. One of the first things you see when you leave that town is a big sign that said, if you lived here, you'd be home by now. And the proposal is, why don't we put big billboard just before they leave Warren County off the northwest that said something similar. We're always looking to attract new people to this area from a workforce standpoint and everything else. It may be an inexpensive way to get people thinking about, is this their future? So just a thought. Thank you very much.
Anybody?
Well, we used to have that sign, live here like you're on vacation all year long. That seemed to go pretty well.
Where is it?
Someone stole it.
Put it in their neighborhood. Supervisor Cressida, did you want to say something?
I just, I agree with Supervisor Wild, I do.
Mhm.
Young people want to live here for a lot of reasons. It's safe from a crime standpoint, from hurricanes and whatever weather standpoint, people want to live here. The easiest way to get them to live here is to create good jobs. He tells his story, that's our family story. In 1969, we vacationed up here. And my mom said, wouldn't this be a great place to live? Here we are. But they found a way to make a living and build a life. And so the next generation could come back. And I think that's, the important thing is to keep focused on economic development. But I certainly love the idea of a sign. Let's do it.
Yeah, that was my story too. I came up as a tourist too, and if anyone would have told me I'd be sitting here, I would have never believed it.
So where do you want to put it?
Where was the one that got stolen?
I think it was near your hotel. No, there was never one that got stolen. That was just a phrase that they used, but where would you put it? And would you use like the billboards down by exit 18? Are you looking for a permanent thing that we own?
Right,
I mean, because you don't want to have to keep paying rent on it.
yeah.
We'll do some
Well, you could.
research.
We could find out.
We'll do some research.
Welcome.
Anybody else for privilege of the floor or any public comment?
Banana.
Mike, did you want to talk?
You know, I was just wondering, you're gonna make a sign or
Oh,
just gonna have a resolution and say, let's put a sign up?
Where do you want to put it?
we could
Oh,
talk
I'm
to
sorry.
Kevin Hajos about where a sign should go, maybe.
Oh, no, not him.
Oh, okay.
Where could you put it?
Yeah, so the 18 sounds good.
Then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Well, we need to find some
Okay,
land that we own.
you know,
So anyways,
all in favor, say aye.
I.